Okay, now we're going to be making our sort of hollowed out arteries. We might be connecting some of them, but definitely not all of them. 0 on the keypad. Go back to our 4 view. And we're going to grab this polygon on the bottom part here and Shift F for smooth shift, right mouse click, and bring that in. And then one more time, and just pull that in using the move tool to move that in. And we're going to do the same thing on top here with these 2 polygons. Smooth shift and move that down. And this should probably be a little tiny bit bigger. So I'm going to use the drag tool, which is Control T, just to make that a little tiny bit bigger. And we'll also edit some of those points in there as well. And smooth shift it one more time and bring it down inward. Okay, and now we'll go in here and actually drag some of these points. And just make it look a little bit better. Like I said before, it doesn't have to be perfectly round, because it wouldn't be, and it looks a lot more realistic if it isn't. Okay. Now the next thing we want to work on is this tube artery going over the top. And we'll grab that polygon and we'll do Shift A so we bring it in on all viewports so we can see it. And as you can see, we are a little off of that model, just a little, but that's because we brought it down so it would match up a little bit better. But overall, that looks pretty much okay. The actual layout of the arteries, just as long as they're in the right place, they are different shapes and sizes, so you can have a little bit of variation in there. Stretch, bring that in just a little. Maybe stretch it out on the sides. We'll move that in, wide rotate. And we want to make sure we keep up with the curvature. So we want to move that in the top view. And this one doesn't have to go down all the way. Just probably about to here. So we're going to smooth shift that one more time. Rotate it. Take a look, see where that polygon's at. See that we have to move that over just a bit. And Y to rotate that. So we have this nice curve. And smooth shift. Y to rotate. Take a look at our top view here. Move that in. And that should be good. Now we can take a look. And no matter where we view this, it's going to look like that goes all the way through. So that's just enough. Just as long as we went around that corner there, it looks good enough. And now we want to take these on the sides over here. And actually I'm going to go ahead and just find that layer, just so we don't have all the other layers in there, and so it's not so confusing. And we'll just bring that in, moving it, and taking a look and seeing how that matches up. Shift F, smooth shift it again, and pull that in a little tiny bit. And the main reason I want to get this done now before we go ahead and metaform this and start really tweaking the details is because it'll be a lot easier to, right now it's a lot easier to do this with one polygon than it is to do it with 4. Or maybe could even end up being a little bit more. Alright, so I'm going to grab that other side here and just smooth shift it, right mouse click, bring that in, move it up so it's matched up, smooth shift, bring that in, and smooth shift it again. And now technically there's going to be probably valves in here directing blood flow. So it probably wouldn't really be connected in a heart where these two tubes are actually connected. There's probably a valve right here, and then a separate tube going in there. So I'm actually pretty much just going to leave it and not connect it as I was planning to. And I'll just smooth shift it one more time and kind of curl that inward. And we'll take a look. And that should be fine. We can leave that the way it is. And now we need to do the smaller ones. Smaller arteries on the sides here. And maybe even edit this tube just a little. Okay. And Control A on that inside polygon, just so that we can fit the view to it and work with that. Zoom out just a little. Shift F. Just pull it in. You can also use the perspective view to kind of place this while looking inside, so that we're not going outside of the boundary and the outer wall. And we could taper these out too if we wanted, but this should be fine. And that looks good right there. And we'll go ahead and do that next one, which I am going to edit just a little because we got that point coming down kind of far. And then we can Shift F, right mouse click, pull that in, and move it. And again, Y to rotate that, and just pull that in. And that should be good. Maybe we'll move it up just a little. And that looks like it should be fine. Really can't see the end of it. And that's pretty much what we're going for here, is just so that no matter where the viewport is, we really can't see that end. And here you can a little bit. If we have shadows and things like that on, you won't even see it. And probably because of the shadows, we won't even have to have it in that far, but we're just doing it just in case. It's better to do it now than it is to find out later while you're actually rendering. And after we've upped the resolution and done textures and UV mapping and all that. So Shift F, right mouse click, T to move that in. We'll just move that down. Smooth shift it again. Y to rotate. And T just to move that. And one last time for this one. Just moving that in. And that looks pretty good. Now we can do that final one. And I'm going to edit it just a little, like we did on the other side, since they're pretty much the exact same. And just smooth shift. Move that. Smooth shift. And like I said, this doesn't really have to be perfect. We're just going to do a pretty decent job on it, so it looks alright. And there we go. Now we have all of those extruded inward, so that we have all our tubing done. And no matter where we pretty much go, with the exception of this one, which is pretty easy to see, but like I said, if we have shadows on or anything like that, that will not show up in our render. And these large ones too, but we definitely would not have them pretty much connected, because there would be valves and stuff in there. But just as long as the outside looks okay, which pretty much does. We need to do a little bit of editing down here before we go and metaform that. And actually, one thing I just noticed is this image does not line up correctly. If you see, we are off by a little tiny bit. But I was mostly paying attention to just the shape of this object, which is why I didn't really catch that before. But that's not really a big deal. If you want, you can kind of fit those things together. I'll just go to the backdrop, bottom left, and we can move that over about right there. Click OK. And we'll see that some of the stuff is off just a little, but it's not really a big deal. Because like I said, this stuff kind of varies anyway. If you're actually modeling the heart, all these different things will vary slightly, so it won't be exactly the same in every single heart. And plus, it really depends on how you want to display it, because technically all of these tubes are all kind of compressed together and not exactly any space in between certain things. But if you want to have a good representation of it for a good display, pointing certain parts out, this looks pretty good. Okay, so now we want to go ahead and kind of finish up these top arteries and tubes that are coming out of this first one. And we could probably use these 3 polygons to do it, but I might just go ahead and metaform that first after we just kind of pull out this bottom part here, which we don't need to pull out too far, but just enough. And actually, now that we have most of the major parts done, we could probably get rid of our background. Once this top 3 are done, we can just remove that background because we won't need it anymore. Pull that up just a little and zoom out. Okay. And I'm going to take a look at those 3 polygons again, just to see if maybe we can do this without a metaform. And actually we probably should, because of the shape of these tubes, because we do want them to come off to the sides, and if we do, we'll probably end up using the metaformed polygons more than one. So I think we will just go ahead and use these, but I am going to create a cut, and actually want to make sure we don't select anything else. We just want to make sure that the 4 polygons are selected around that loop. And there we go. We just verify down here that we have 4 selected, and I'm just going to go ahead and knife that, and now we're going to actually edit these 3 polygons. And we can edit some of the other ones as well. Just kind of line these up with our actual image reference. And we just want to make sure this is kind of far enough out. And actually it's going to be these 3 right here. And I did have that back one selected, but that's okay. We didn't do any major editing. And we'll just bring these in. And we're going to do 2 levels of smooth shifts on here before we actually get to the actual shape. and that way we can kind of position this a little bit better. And we're going to want to go on the bottom here too and kind of bring these ones in, and just so it stays nice and smooth and keep up the continuity of it. And that should be fine right there. We'll just go ahead and grab that first one and smooth shift that, pull it up, and we're going to stretch that in and move that down in just a little bit because we want a nice blend into that. And now we can pull that out. And this doesn't have to match up perfect. We're just using the image in the back as a guide, so it doesn't need to be exactly perfect. And we'll scale that in, smooth shift it, bring it out just a little, scale that out, Shift A, take a look at our shape. We'll go ahead and edit some of these points and kind of pull that out. And if you want, you could go in there and move that so it matched up perfectly. But I'm not really going to worry about that. I'm just going to create that little lip on the end there. And stretch that in. Maybe move it up just a little bit more, so we don't have such a sharp crease. And I'll go ahead and just pull these points in the center, and that way it's a little more rounded. And then we can just go ahead and finish this off so that we're pulling these points down and these polygons down into the model so it's hollowed out. And we can also go in now and kind of tweak this just a bit so it looks a little bit nicer, a little bit better looking. And we'll see how that looks, that first one. And it looks okay. We might want to bend it back just a little, just to keep up with the curves as we have it in the image. We'll just select those points and kind of rotate it, just so we're keeping up with that. And now we can just go ahead and actually I'm going to use modify bend and just kind of bend that top part a little so it's kind of coming off to the side. That looks a lot better. And we're going to do the same thing as we did before, copying these sections and just pasting them down because we really don't need to redo that whole section again. So I'm going to select a middle polygon there and shift right bracket just to go out here and select all of those loops. And we can Control C, go into a new layer, Control V, and now place that first layer in the background and go ahead and just position where this is going to go. And we're just going to do one at a time. I'm also going to copy this and paste it onto another layer for that next two, but we're working on this one right now. And we can see that we need to bring that over just a little. But we're still on separate layers. We just kind of want to position that. And that looks like it should be good. So we can go to our first layer, grab that polygon, and hit delete. And go back and Control X and Control V. And now select a few of these polygons, hit Control A, and that way we're zoomed in on that area. It'll be easy to work with. And I'm just going to expand that perspective view. And now we can go in and just weld the points. And that looks real nice now. It's nice and blended together. How we can, use Control T to kind of change that a little. And like I said, it doesn't really match up perfect. with our image, but that's okay. But if you want to, you most definitely can. But I'm using the bend tool now again. Modify bend, just to kind of bend that out. And maybe we'll add a little bit of variation in there, make it a little bit smaller, and that way it doesn't look like it just was copied over. And that's one thing you want to make sure is when you're cloning these things or copying and pasting them, that you do make some adjustments to it, because otherwise it won't look realistic, because anything that's perfect will not look realistic. So if you see the same thing over and over again, it's not going to look like it's real. So we're just kind of moving that into place. We'll take a look. That looks like it's okay. Move it down just a little. Go back to our first layer. We can select that polygon and go ahead and just delete that. Go back to our last layer, Control X and Control V to paste that into the first layer. We'll grab these polygons, Shift A, just to bring them together. And you can see we are brought down just a little bit. So I'll just grab that section, that piece, and hit just the right bracket, which will select connected. So select all the connected polygons to that polygon I just selected. So if you haven't used select connected before, just select one polygon as part of this, and since we haven't joined it together yet, I could just hit the right bracket key and it will automatically select all of that, and then I could just move it up. We'll grab our points, weld them together. And sometimes it's a little hard to see where the points are, so we can just use the cages. And actually it looks like we did the wrong one there. We do have a little bit of weirdness in there. So we might want to go in there and edit that really quick. We'll just get this worked out first on the other sides, since those are pretty easy to see. And just this last one, yeah, it looks like that piece is kind of coming in just a little. So we need to find our cage for that. So we're going to use the drag tool and just kind of take a look at some of these polygons. We could just drag that out and now select these points and weld them. And we'll just take a look here. And maybe want to bend that in again. Just a tiny bit. And now we'll look at all of it. And there we go. That's looking real nice. Change this to the textured view. So we can see it a little bit better, nice and smooth. Of course, we still have our cages on, so we can hit D on the keyboard, go to viewports, and turn off show cages. And also we have these lines. So if we turn off show guides, then we'll get rid of that as well. So now our heart is pretty much done, except the fact that we still want to go ahead and metaform that and do some of the finer details on certain areas. And also, if you take a look, this section is still kind of intersected. So what we can actually do really quick with that is just go in and grab that polygon on the inside, shift and right bracket, just to grab it. And we're just going to use the bend tool and bend it out. And hopefully it's facing the right direction. It's not. So undo that, and on the keyboard, select the other way, the other direction. And we can just, and even that is the wrong way. And that's because we're not entirely straight here. So that is going to do some weirdness, even if we edit that. So maybe bend wouldn't be exactly the best tool. So we can just go in there and actually select some of these polygons individually and just go ahead and rotate that outward. About right there. And we'll see how that looks. And there we go. Now it's not intersecting anymore.